This is a thriller movie that makes people think deeply and terrify. Just think about it. When you are alone at home late at night, does the invisible fear of someone peeking at you make your hair stand on end? And the female lead Ruth is in such an environment. She always felt like someone was staring at her from across the street, but looking out. But there was no result at all. The next day the news broke out that a girl was killed near the apartment. What's scary is, this is not an individual case. Within 1 month, 4 women have already died unnaturally. But how could this happen to me? His lucky mentality made him go shopping alone as usual. But last night's murder case kept him on edge. Look at everyone behind you. It seems like they're all tracking themselves. To help oneself relax, he plans to watch a small movie to relieve himself. After seating, she carefully scrutinized the situation behind her. There seems to be nothing unusual, but after a moment, a strange man suddenly sat behind him. This made his newly relaxed nerves tense again. The problem is that there is so much spare time. Why do you have to sit behind yourself? Ruth looked back nervously. In the dim light, he only saw men's brown leather shoes, so she hurriedly got up and left. Don't forget to look back and observe the man's movements when you leave. You might think the female lead is narcissistic, persecuted, and paranoid, but after she arrived at the supermarket, that suspicious figure reappears. Is all this a coincidence? To confirm if he is a man from the cinema, Ruth forced herself to calm down, observing the other person's temper quietly. It's exactly the same as the man in the cinema. This instantly lifted his heart to his throat, so she wanted to use the shelves to avoid the men. But once the prey is targeted by the hunter, how could they easily escape? In panic, Ruth quickly hid in the storage room, and quietly observed the other party's movements. At this point, the supermarket guy found out that he is the restaurant in this page. Ruth still had lingering palpitations when she returned home, so she told her husband about her experiences. My husband immediately took her back to the supermarket to retrieve surveillance, but the husband only saw Ruth breaking things from surveillance, attracted the attention of men, also advised his wife that he might have thought too much, but only Ruth knows the feeling of being followed, and took photos of the man. After returning home, my husband left early and stayed late as usual. He devoted all his energy to the boss, but neglected his wife. Perhaps you think her husband has been away for a long time, causing the female lead to a lack of love leads to the feeling of being spied on and followed. But the next scene proves that the feeling of a woman cannot be ignored. She opened the curtains. Sure enough, I saw a figure looking this way across the street. She waved her hand tentatively. Unexpectedly received a response from the opposite side. When my husband returns, both of them reported to the police together. Ruth recounted all her experiences to the police, and take out the photos, to be sure, tracking oneself and the voyeur opposite the same person, although I didn't see the face on the other side clearly, but he could feel it later. The police took their husband to the opposite side to confirm the situation. I didn't expect my husband to come back and say, although it's the same person, but as a neighbor, it's normal to encounter them in the supermarket. Besides, the other party doesn't seem to be anything unusual either. Instead, I blame my wife for being too sensitive. His neglect and distrust, causing Ruth to collapse. On weekdays, sweet little couple, but they're estranged because of a voyeur. The next morning, Ruth met the man across from her again. In order to obtain the truth, she started reverse tracking. Turns out the man was a cleaner at a strip club, and she also met her female neighbor Ruth here. After telling the neighbors about the situation, but the neighbor said he didn't notice being peeked at. I don't know much about men either, but she quite agrees with Ruth's viewpoint. As a woman, must have a sense of self-protection. After returning home, Ruth, who lacked a sense of security, pushed the door up, but in the middle of the night, she suddenly heard screams coming from the female neighbor next door. But no matter how he knocks on the door, there wasn't any reaction inside. Instead, it startled all the neighbors around us. After the landlord opened the door with a spare key, but I only found a fallen light and a little cat. Didn't see the female neighbor, but he clearly heard the screams of his female neighbor. Later, Ruth called the club where her neighbor worked and there was no news of him. This is the neighbor's ex-boyfriend knocking on the door, but I had an appointment with him yesterday. But until now, I haven't been able to reach him. No one answered the phone call. Ruth is coming to the neighbor's phone and called again, but I heard my phone ringing in the room. But the neighbors never opened the door. Just as Brother Beard was about to leave, Ruth asked him for a favor. We'll meet across the street for a while at voyeur. But no matter how Brother Beard knocks on the door, I haven't received any response. But there seems to be someone inside. Brother Beard had to put down some harsh words before leaving, but Ruth still mustered the courage to knock on the door again. Unexpectedly, the person who opened the door was an old man. Ruth quickly apologized and left. Are you really too sensitive? But as he waited for the elevator to prepare to go downstairs, the voice that scared him appeared again. What surprised him even more was that the other party actually shouted to catch the thief, take a bite back, claiming that her family was threatened and harassed by Ruth, and she was also being tracked by Ruth, even peeping. Under the mediation of the police, the two shook hands and made peace. After the police leave, the husband also felt his debt to his wife, so I took him to the company's cocktail party. Unexpectedly, my husband catered to clients. Teasing the man in front of him has made him increasingly unfamiliar. The distance between the two is getting farther and farther as a result. After leaving the cocktail party, he can't get a car, can only take the subway home. However, a glance back, that damn figure, appearing in front of him again, An ominous premonition surged into my heart in an instant. She wants to get off midway. Unexpectedly, the subway malfunctioned. Stopped temporarily, just as he was panicking. The man is already sitting opposite. But the man just explained to him why he always looks out the window. Because he takes care of his sick father all year round. Made her develop the habit of staring at the window in a daze. No one would have noticed him until Ruth reached out that night. Make him mistake it for saying hello to himself. When her husband and the police approached her, I only knew the reason myself. Well done, put on a voyeuristic hat. My own father was also threatened. And now he just needs Ruth to apologize to himself, since it was a misunderstanding. Apologies are natural. But is it really that simple for men? After Ruth returned home in fear, I was planning to pack my things and leave. But suddenly I heard music coming from the next door. He thought it was his female neighbor who came back. I wanted to say goodbye to the other party. But when I knocked on the door, I found that the door was not locked. He slowly walked in. Unexpectedly, she found out that her neighbor had already died at home. When she wakes up, I found out it was the peeping man from across the street. At this moment, her husband also returned home, and called out her name. Ruth was just about to respond, but was cut in the throat with a knife. She struggled to get the pistol from her neighbor's drawer, but halfway up I lost my strength. Unable to find the husband of his wife, I finally thought of dialing my wife's phone number, but the phone ringtone came from next door. When he curiously walked out of the door, when you want to explore the truth, the peeping man he once thought was normal, happened to come out of it. That's right, Ruth pretended to be dead and deceived the man, and got the neighbor's pistol. Sometimes, when men are unreliable, I can only rely on myself. After reading it, I have summarized 4 points. Everyone else can supplement themselves in the comments section.